I'm Michele Abrams.
And I'm Natasha Gregson-Wagner. And you're listening to
You Might Know Her From
with Anne and Damien.
Surprise, it's really just Damien and Anne.
It's us. We're here. We're back with you, our beautifuls. Welcome back to another episode, another very special episode of You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
That's right. If you don't remember, if you're new to the show and perhaps just decided to click on this episode, this is our show where we, longtime collaborators, best friends, comedy partners, soul sisters, usually we break down what we're talking about in pop culture, what we love, what we hate, current events, how our bodies are aging, all of that. And then we always interview an actress. However, SAG-AFTRA has been on strike since July fucking 14th. So as recently as last week, at the time of this recording, SAG just sat down with AMPTP.
AMPTP, you got it. Keep it.
We're going to keep it.
It's very annoying that, basically they're the negotiating committee for all of the
big
studio heads.
Yeah.
And so it's, very annoying that they have, one of the most annoying acronyms, AMPTP. So they sat down with SAG, but they basically, used their old talking points and, had nothing new to bring to the table. And then SAG was like, what? And then AMPTP walked away. So we're back to square one, basically, with SAG-AFTRA, and it's very depressing.
It's super shocking to me because I think that the WGA walked away from their final negotiations really pleased. And I know that it's going to be some transitional years because they're really doing bare minimum in terms of staffing writers' rooms and all of that. But they walked away with some good feathers in their cap in terms of AI and residuals and, and hopefully it's the wave of a new future. So I was really hopeful and thought that SAG was going to settle, that AMPTP would come in with, refined bullet points after their negotiations with WGA. But you thought wrong. So we're back here with another special episode. We've been calling this quote unquote, if we had a Patreon, which is to say we are committed. We've been doing this independently produced podcast out of our own pockets with the help of Grumpy Entertainment. We've been doing this podcast for, I think, almost 4 years, over 4 years. Who the fuck knows? Yeah. But we've done over 100 episodes, over 100 actress interviews, and we are committed to launching a Patreon when SAG-AFTRA finally makes a fair deal. So we've been giving y'all a little taste of what that will look like, whether it be us interviewing a non-actor, like previous episode with Ted Casablanca, dream man of ours, a former celebrity gossip columnist and writer, or if it's just Anne and I shooting the shit, maybe book clubbing something, or maybe we do some sort of event and we want to recap it for y'all. So last episode we said we were going to come back here and watch a Halloween adjacent film. And so Anne, what are we book clubbing this week? What are we movie clubbing?
Baby, we are movie clubbing the 1992 film Buffy the Vampire Slayer, directed by Fran Rubel Kuzui and written by none other than Joss Whedon. We're not going to really mention him much on this podcast otherwise because we are not fans, but he did write the screenplay. So if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. Join us back here. We just have one more piece of business before we get into the Buffy the Vampire Slayer of it all, and that is the fact that as of today's recording, we lost a legend that Damien and I have been after for You Might Know Her From for many years. And we got close and we thought it was maybe going to happen once and then it fell through. But she was very high on our list, and that is none other than one Miss Suzanne Somers. May she rest in peace. Damien sent me the news today announcing her death, as he always does send me celebrity death announcements. And I was shocked. She was young.
I handled this one with more care, though, because it felt...
You did.
It felt more like... I don't know. It just was sadder than, other... I don't even know who's the most recent person who died before this, where we just say, I think remember one time I was like, Lena Horne is dead! And you were like, 8 years ago, babe. And I was like, oh, I saw an old news article that was fed to me. But this one felt... she was battling breast cancer. She was, I think, 76. And she was really a legend. I grew up watching Three's Company in syndication, and she's so funny. And then, of course, I grew up with Step by Step, which I know you watched as well. We were both fans. Yes. And she could sing, and she was sort of like a product of, old school Hollywood. Also, she got such bad press for fucking Three's Company. What it was really about was having fair pay for, I believe, her and Joyce DeWitt. But if not, it was maybe just for her because she was like the breakout star. She was like the Kim Cattrall, and it was like, oh, sorry, like John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt are going to make more money than you, or John Ritter's going to make more money than both of you because he's a man. And so then they like wrote her, like punished her by, you know, like writing her scenes on the telephone. And it's just like, she was ahead of her time. She's a notorious or infamous Broadway flop, which I love. Talk about that, Anne.
Love. Okay, so she has a show. It's one of my golden geese. You know, it's called The Blonde and the Thunderbird. It was, I think it was in the mid-2000s. Is that right? The mid-2000s?
Is it even that? I thought it was 90s.
No, it was in the 2000s because Barry Manilow, her best friend, somebody needs to check on Barry today, but Barry Manilow had told her when she was writing this one-woman show called The Blonde and the Thunderbird, which is, of course, an allusion to her famous star-making turn in American Graffiti where she's just like a hot blonde and a Thunderbird. But she wrote this show and it was notoriously apparently horrible. And Barry Manilow was like, I told you, Suzanne, Broadway will break your heart. And it did. You know, like I think it only ran for a handful of performances. There was, I think, B-roll footage that existed somewhere, but I wonder if it exists at the New York Public Library Performing Arts Center, because I remember the thing that was, I think, shouted out in the review was that I think she had like maybe an alcoholic parent. And at one point during the show, I think she hid under the table and saying like, if I only had a brain or something. Anyway, I really am into whatever she put together on that stage, and I'm sad I didn't see it. And she had a sense of humor about it. She also wrote a book of poetry, and I used to read from that book of poetry, and it is very sexual, very funny and frank and weird. I think she was just a weirder person than everybody thought she was for being like a hot blonde with big breasts. And her late in life husband, they were super horny for each other. She was always talking about how big his penis was.
I was literally just going to bring that up.
They were always like posting pictures of them together, like half naked. And I was like, well, you know, Suzanne really, I think, lived her life out loud and was who she was. And I appreciate that. Oh, she also has a great cameo in Serial Mom, which I love her for, which sort of like was self-referential and funny, and I appreciated her. I just think that she got a lot of shit for how she looked, and she was a great physical comedian and didn't get a lot of credit for being smart or savvy. And I think the people who could look beyond how she was typecast saw like a very funny, strange, unique celebrity. And oh my God, and Thigh Master, which was formative for us. I feel like Thigh Master was a running gag in the late 80s and early 90s.
Completely. Absolutely.
But she owned it all. Like, she did not have any qualms about like owning the campy aspects of her celeb personality and persona. I loved that about her.
Didn't she like later in life was like, yeah, it didn't really do anything, or like, you know, like it didn't.
She copped to it being like a money grab. Good for her.
And also, this is sort of like a little bit of a turn, but didn't Nicole Parker, who was on Mad TV, who like now has a theater career, didn't she didn't she revive, quote unquote, The Blonde and the Thunderbird like at Birdland or something? She like did a 3-night performance where she like did it.
Okay, no, I don't know about that, but I'm obsessed with that. Very like Leslie Kritzer does.
I could be mistaken, but we'll look it up. But I believe some version of Nicole Parker did The Blonde and the Thunderbird or excerpts from it somewhere after the fact.
I would be obsessed with that. If anybody has the bootleg, please transfer it to me. Whatever. I need the file. I'm really sad we didn't get to talk to Suzanne. I feel like she would have been very much our cup of tea, and I hope that she is not in any pain, and I hope that she is resting well. We love you, Suzanne Somers, and this is a Suzanne Somers fan podcast.
Completely.
If you don't like Suzanne, get out of here. Just hang up now. Yeah, hang up.
Leave. With all that goodwill towards Suzanne, who we love, and I love that she could sing. I'll have Anne put a clip, one of my favorite clips, when she says, "Doctor, Mr. MD," who's that? The Radicals, the New Radicals. She sang it on an episode of Step by Step, and that's like how I learned that song, which then became like a karaoke song of mine. I love a TV star who can sing a little.
Same. We miss that these days. We really miss that. And I'm not talking about,
We Are a Family. We miss Nell Carter and B. Arthur singing that.
The talent doesn't exist anymore. Sorry, babes. And I'm not talking about Scarlett Johansson singing in Marriage Story or Adam Driver doing whatever he did in that. I'm not talking about that. This is different.
This is a great segue. So, as we stated before, we watched Halloween-adjacent film Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And one of my big takeaways, and what I'm starting with here, is I thought Kristy Swanson was a better singer when she walked down the alley and sang Feelings. And I was like, oh, she kind of sounds pretty good.
Right, she's got a little something. Also, that's how I learned that song. That is how I learned that song. I thought you were going to go in a different direction, but 100% I thought she had like a nice timbre happening there, and it was very effortless. I think I said something on our last episode about how what makes a Halloween adjacent film is that it has like a great soundtrack or like has some great musical numbers. And I thought this was going to come through, but my memory did not serve. There was a very like 90s Toad the Wet Sprocket, who else? The Divinals. And of course, Susanna Hoffs is in like towards the end of the movie or the credit sequence.
She does. So Susanna Hoffs sings the end title credits called We Close Our Eyes, which I found out. I feel like I have a good amount of like trivia bits that I was like putting together like a mad scientist over here. Yeah. It was originally a song by Oingo Boingo, which is like an 80s band. And if you don't know, if you know, you know. But if you don't know, Oingo Boingo was Danny Elfman's band. So he actually wrote the song that is the end title song of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as interpreted by one of mine and Anne's favorites, Susanna Hoffs of the Bangles. So, wow.
That's why
the song is not good.
Fucking credits. Thank you for that. Yes, the songs did not live up to my memory because I feel like let's get into it, because I feel like the movie for me, I was really glad to revisit it. It was very important to my youth, but I feel like the whole aesthetic of the film that came out in 1992 is a precursor for movies that came after it. For me, the things that rang like that seemed closest in tone were some combination of Clueless and Scream. Does that resonate for you at all?
Definitely like the Clueless, Can't Hardly Wait, Jawbreaker, like 90s, yes, like mid to late 90s teen comedy. For sure, I felt that. Well, you said Scream as well? Yeah, I think I can get that. I think what I thought, I liked the film as a kid, but I don't know that I had like a real like core memory of it. So I was excited to visit it and see like what I remembered, if anything. And also if I was going to walk away being like, oh my God, it's so fucking good. Like, I'm so glad you made me rewatch this. But I was a little bit like, felt like it was more inconsequential than I think I had hoped. Like, I felt like it was like 30 minutes in and I was like, what's happening? And then I was like, oh, now we're in it. And then I was like, oh, now Merrick is dead. Like, it was like Donald Sutherland was like the star and apparently like a total diva on set. But then I was like, he's dead. We're like 40 minutes in, he's dead. So
it's amazing. Yeah, I agree. I think tone, like the pacing of it is off. It seems like a lot was maybe left on the cutting room floor, which did not that did not matter to me as a young person.
Totally.
For me, I was like, I thought it was paced perfectly and hysterical. I feel like I remembered about 65% of the dialogue, which is one of those things where you revisit a movie from your childhood and you're like, I had no idea that this lived in my bones. But I do have to say, I still really loved it and enjoyed it, but didn't hold up as good as I had hoped it would. However, I feel like the cast, if nothing else, if you all watched this and were like, why the fuck did you make me watch this? I feel like the cast at least delivered for you on some level. The number of cameos is outstanding. And they weren't even famous then. They weren't cameos then. They were just people doing bit parts. It was like you were watching School Ties or The Dead Poets Society where you're like, oh, I didn't know that person was in it. So I have a lot to say, but I just want, like, give me your take, give me your overall take, having not seen it in I don't know how many years.
Okay, my overall take. I wasn't sure. I'm still not decided where I'm like at with Kristy Swanson's performance. I think I had higher hopes that she was going to jump off the screen, but also like Buffy is not a totally likable character because she's supposed to be sort of vapid and like not want this thing. However, I'm not sure that like the shift, like Luke Perry is a total star, and so like them together, I was like, I don't think she's matching the star, like the charisma that he's giving. So I'm not sure that she carried the film for me. But that said, I thought that what they did a really good job of, and something that like most especially 90s and 80s films usually do a terrible job, is they did a really good job of covering the stunts, so it seemed like she was doing things. And there was that great scene where she first meets Merrick and she's doing like a tumble after like her that was the worst cheerleaders I've ever seen in my entire life. But they like the worst. It's like the opening sequence is like so long, and it's like I'm like, why is this long? They're bad. Like they should have.
It's so bad. And like literally in my notes, the first thing I was like, first of all, Kristy Swanson is the worst dancer in the crew. And then my note below it, I was watching it like at 11:30 p.m. like trying to write in my old prescription glasses, and I was like, she is disgusting. Like I remember being so hot for her as like a 9-year-old, and I thought that she was repulsive in the first 30 minutes. At a certain point, though, and we'll get to that, I'm not even going to reveal this now, but I did find her opening to be repulsive, and I agree. The cheerleading was horrific. Her dancing was by far the worst of all of them.
Completely.
And then you get to her tumbling, like you said, and it's like, I know there was a stunt double, but there was something that she did, and I was like, she's good in the action sequences. Like, she looks really good fighting, and maybe like doing 1 or 2 tumbles, but she can't dance. That seems like an odd thing.
So it was one of my first notes when I was like, it like pulled me into the film because I was like, oh, like, did she do that? And then I was like, she's like in her body. And then I watched it, and then another scene, I felt like they shot it from far away, and like I was like, maybe it wasn't her. So then I went back and I rewatched the tumble scene after I watched the whole movie, and I was like, okay, so what I think that they did was they like filmed the tumble sequence like in profile, so like the person looked enough like her, and then they had Kristy do a cartwheel in a new shot coming out of the tumble, so like it was like she was still doing it, and it really was a great trick. So I agree that like she was more engaged in her body in action sequence, but I really think it was great stunt work and great direction.
Yes, shout out to Fran Rubel Kuzui, because that was a great shot. I agree. It got me. I was like, oh, she's doing this. Can I tell you like one scene that I rewatched was when she was going to like the carnival sequence or whatever before she meets Lothos, and she is riding that motorcycle and she crashes it into the circus ride and then jumps off of it. I was like, I think that was her. I think she did it. But yeah, I found her repulsive. I thought like my memory was that she was so hot, and I found her to be disgusting. But I'll tell you when it turned for me.
Do you want to tell me, or you want to wait a minute?
Let's wait. Let's get more into other things. What were some other key takeaways for you?
I don't know if I love Donald Sutherland, but I do think he's good, and he like creates atmosphere, which I think is good for this film because it like he like comes in and he sets the tone of what is to come, right? He's like, it's ominous, it's foreshadowing, his energy is good and a great counter to what Kristy and Hilary Swank are trying to throw at us. And I remember Joss Whedon had said that he was a nightmare on set and was like improvising and like going off script and improvising, and that the director, Fran, was letting him do so because he was the most high profile star attached to the film. So watching it, I thought he was good for the most part, like just in, I guess, energy and in character development. But then there was a moment where he was like, it's and he like was clearly like paraphrasing the line, and he was like, it's and like said like it's and I was like, okay, so maybe I would be annoyed if I wrote something and Donald Sutherland was like, yeah, I remember, but let's keep going, let's just go,
I can do better,
let's just go,
I could do better.
So that made me like LOL. Also, like, I am not a Buffy like stan of the series, but I think
same.
What I liked about the show was how gravely serious, like the stakes were high, no pun intended, and it was like gravely serious, even though it was still a dark comedy. But what I like about the movie is how there's this candy-coated version of Buffy that has to sort of be cracked, and like maybe that is what the pilot of the original movie is. Like maybe Buffy is a cheerleader, but like my memory doesn't remember Sarah Michelle Gellar being any version of what she is in the movie, even in the pilot. But I could be also mistaken because that was 1997.
Yeah, same. I also watched the first, I would say 2 seasons, maybe 3, and my entry point was Seth Green, who apparently does have a small cameo in this film, and I guess he's a vampire that gets like kicked by Buffy after the prom, like in the prom sequence or the dance sequence. I couldn't spot him.
Same.
But like Seth Green was very important to me, I think, from Austin Powers, and I wrote him a letter. He wrote me back. It was the best celebrity fan letter that anyone ever wrote. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but he responded to every single point and was lovely. And I watched the Buffy series because he played Oz the werewolf, right? That's right.
That's right.
I was into it. I was into Nicholas Brendan. I liked Charisma Carpenter. I liked Allison Hannigan. I don't know that I care about any of them now, but I do respect that the show seemed to have, you know, it's not for me when I went back to try to watch it because I thought maybe as an adult I could go hard for it. And it didn't really work for me, but I actually really do appreciate the people that like dive into the lore and feel like it served its characters and the storyline and also managed to walk a tone that is comedic and dark, which you know I love. And I just have to ask you, because we mentioned it last episode, how was Hilary Swank for you?
I'm so glad.
This was her film debut.
Mm-hmm, I saw that. So I will say this. I think what I said last time was that my young person memory was that like she should not have been cast as a popular girl. And I stand by it. However, she is sort of a foil to Buffy. She's sort of like a frenemy. She and Michelle Abrams, who we'll get to in a second, are sort of like the two like they're like Buffy's frenemies, and then Paris, I forgot her last name, Paris Vaughn, the other actress, is like Buffy's real friend. She like stabs a vampire at the prom. So I was like, Hilary Swank is kind of a villain who like swagger jacks Buffy by like getting the yellow pleather like Jubilee jacket at the mall.
Swagger jacks, is that a term? You're teaching me things.
Swagger jack, yeah. So she like, and I was like, okay, like, can I buy that Hilary Swank is supposed to be like a sort of mean girl / sort of like a wannabe loser? Absolutely.
Right. Like I think also like I think the credit to the film is that they made her also like an idiot, and not just like a shallow person, but like a true idiot. And I feel like, I have to say, I feel like it was one of my favorite Hilary Swank performances. She shows some physical comedy chops. She seems like a real idiot. And I don't think she was doing this kind of material on Alaska Daily, but I think that she should get back to it. And maybe on the heels of this, she got Karate Kid parts, whatever.
2. I don't remember. 3?
Yeah.
When was she on 90210? Is that after Karate Kid?
Let's get into it, because I think the casting director obviously was associated with 90210, because we not only have Luke Perry, but we also have Hilary Swank, who shows up at some point in the 90210.
I believe she plays Carly, I think that's her name, Carly, and she dates...
Isn't she poor and she dates Steve, but she's poor?
Oh, I thought she dated Brandon and she has like a kid. She's like a single mom and...
Oh, maybe that's right.
And I think she dates Brandon literally, and she's like cut before the first... She's like not even in a full season.
Yeah, she doesn't get much to do. But let's get into the Michele Abrams of it all, because as you said, Michele Abrams plays like the curly-haired...
Yeah, this is one of the women that we said we were at the beginning of the show, in case you didn't know. Michele Abrams.
And I was watching it, and like, to me, she is iconic in my memory of the film, because what is her line that she says? She's like, "It's retro," and she goes, "Yeah, retro," and it's one of those things that lives in my body.
Yeah.
And when I saw her face, I was like, I know her, but what is the other thing that I know her from? Because there's clearly like I didn't even Google this of my head.
But when you, I Googled you, and I Googled you. I texted you, and I said, the one mean girl looks like Guinevere Turner, former guest of this show. We love her, lesbian icon. And you were like, Bob or curly hair? And I said, long curly hair. And you said, wait till you search her name. And I didn't even search her name. I just was like, I was like, I know who it is. Folks, if you don't know, Michele Abrams is Jenny Garth's like old friend who comes to a sleepover at Brenda's in, I think, the first season of 90210, where this isn't funny, but she really gets all of she basically like is like, Andrea, you're a loser. Donna, you're like an ugly virgin. Kelly, why don't you tell everybody about how you had sex, and even if it wasn't non-consensual? And then Brenda's like, you're a fucking bitch. And they all like are like, yeah, you are a fucking bitch. And then she leaves, and it's like the first, what is her name? The character's name? Amanda?
Yeah, Amanda. And I think the game is called Skeletons in the Closet, and it's like the game that she introduces at the sleepover. I'm sorry, she's so hot in it. She has this like curly hair that it's like flipped over, and it's great to see her sort of be not the polar opposite, but like the mean girl in this, whereas she's sort of supposed to be like a vapid idiot in Buffy, but also maybe a little mean.
She's like a mean girl, but like
dumb.
Daffy. Yeah, she's like Daffy.
Yes, and she's so vicious in 90210.
It's like one of the cruelest performances. Like, it's because also it's like it's comical, but like she is playing it gravely. I don't know, actually. I'm gonna rewatch the episode.
Yeah,
we'll book club
We're gonna rewatch it later tonight.
But it's like it's so good because like she's playing it gravely serious. But like I've watched it within the last, let's say, 8 years. I've watched it. Same. I've watched it not that long ago, and I remember being like I was like Gabrielle Carteris and Tori Spelling are like giving wild performances. Jenny Garth is very good, and
she always is. She's very grounded for the show. Very grounded to that soapy material.
And Michele is like really grounding this like mean character. And like I don't know about Shannon Doherty, but I love what she's doing. I'm not sure it's good, but I love it. Please go watch that episode. I'm going to put it in the show notes. It is a season 1 episode. We'll put it in the show notes. I think it must be available somewhere. I do have 90210 on DVD, thank God. So if I have to, I'll film my TV and upload the clip. But Michele Abrams is, when SAG-AFTRA finally gets what it needs out of AMPTP, I'm putting Michele Abrams at the top of the list because we have so much to discuss with her. And my memory is that, am I making this up? Like she's wearing like a super hot like plaid blazer in that episode. Anyway, I can't get over how great she looks in it with her hair flip. And it was such a pleasure to see her in Buffy. And we're not even getting to the fact that the other person that we mentioned is the Bob who gets murdered.
Oh,
I can't even remember the character's name. Karina, what is her name in the movie? Cassandra, yes.
So Cassandra is played by Natasha Gregson-Wagner, who is, of course, the daughter of Natalie Wood. And she's Natalie Wood's daughter. But I have to double check this because Natalie Wood married Robert Wagner, then divorced him, then married
other way around.
No, she married him, then divorced him, then married this other person, then divorced him, then remarried Robert Wagner again. She married Robert Wagner twice. So I think Natasha Gregson.
She's Gregson's daughter. She's Gregson's daughter.
Yes, but I love that part of her. And she was also in that movie with Robert Downey Jr. in the 90s. Anyway, she was like a 90s semi-star. I feel like she almost cracked the code, and then like I don't know where she is now.
Do you know where she is now?
She started participating, like she helped put out Natalie Wood's perfume Natalie, which was apparently like them trying to approximate like Natalie Wood's scent that our friend Seth got me a bottle of a few years ago. And I was like, this seems very grim, but I love it, obviously. Natalie Wood is one of my favorites.
Who's Natalie Wood's sister? Lana
Wood.
So Lana and Natasha Gregson-Wagner do not have a relationship. And just to give you context, Natasha Gregson-Wagner, you want to know where she is right now?
Tell me.
Married and has a child with Barry Watson from Seventh Heaven, who's the oldest brother on Seventh Heaven.
I like that for her. He seems grounded. He had some medical scares, I think, in the 2000s.
Did he?
And he was handsome. Yeah, he had cancer and he like almost didn't make it. So I'm hoping that Barry Watson is a good guy and that we root for their love affair. I like it. They both are beautiful brunettes.
Can I tell you something? Speaking of Barry Watson and Seventh Heaven, something else that is exciting, just like an exciting trivia piece that like this was not in the IMDb trivia. It was just like I went down a tear. So
okay, tell me.
A lot of the high school scenes were shot at University High School, and that's where Jawbreaker was filmed, My So-Called Life, and Seventh Heaven. But auditorium scenes were shot at a different high school, John Marshall High School, which you and I know is where Grease was filmed. Also, Can't Hardly Wait, Sister, Sister, Pretty in Pink, Boy Meets World. I don't know if it was the whole school or just the auditorium. This film only used the auditorium, but I loved that. That was so thrilling to me to be like, yes, the big auditorium where fucking Kristy Swanson doesn't know how to fucking dance is exactly where John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John did dance, and Cha-Cha Di Gregorio, may she rest.
Oh my God, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I have to say that in the vein of you and I forever proving as 40 and near 40-year-olds that we are still our childhood selves. Like when I went to Los Angeles to visit my dear friend Angie for like the first time, I made her drive me to that high school so I could take a picture in front of it. And the other LA important landmark,
the Clueless House?
The Walsh House from 90210.
Of course.
So I feel like both of those things play so perfectly into this film, and that I'm going to have to rewatch those scenes. That makes me so happy. That is the part of LA that I love, where it's like, well, we've only got 3 high schools. Let's just keep using them.
Completely. I totally agree.
Okay, so let's get into all the cameos. So we mentioned the beloved Natasha Gregson-Wagner and Michele Abrams.
And we mentioned Seth Green.
And Hilary Swank.
And Seth Green said he wasn't, like he was cut from it, but then people were like, you can see him for 3 seconds, but it's from the back. And I was like, well, I didn't see him, but allegedly he's there.
Either.
I will tell you who I did see, which was Ricki Lake, who plays a waitress very briefly, named like Charlotte.
I recognized her voice. I didn't even recognize.
But she was already established because she had already been in Hairspray and probably other John Waters films at that point.
Yeah, Serial Mom may have been around the same time.
I think it's 96, but who knows? Yeah, I think it's 96.
It's later. But yes, definitely established star. So I was into her doing it. And I'm like, who is she connected to? I'm worried that it's Joss Whedon, that's how she got in. But like, it's a big deal that they got Donald Sutherland, who was obviously like I think Oscar nominee, huge star. Not a huge star, but like a huge actor with gravitas. I have to tell you, that's where I learned who Rutger Hauer was, who I know is like a famous, I think, Dutch actor. And I know he's famous for The Hitcher.
Same.
But this made me love him. And I felt like Rutger Hauer was a really great like Jeopardy name to know. And I felt like it gave me weight in certain conversations with film bros that I knew who he was, and then I Googled the rest of his credits. I've never seen him in another film, but I do want to see The Hitcher. But I think Rutger Hauer, actually, I read up on him briefly today, seems like a cool guy, like a legit cool guy. And I thought his performance was very funny. And we've been waiting to bring up the pièce de résistance, which is, of course, Paul Rubens as like his henchman, which I think is one of the great performances of all time.
He's so great. And there's this well, we also didn't mention David Arquette, who is, I think, is also a maniac in it, and so I love him so much. But there was this great 1-2 punch, and I don't know if you picked up on it. I'm assuming you did, but I'm going to say it. So it involves both Paul Rubens and David Arquette. So David Arquette is turned into a vampire, and so he has, like, Luke Perry and he are best friends at the beginning of the film, and he takes his life, and he says, so David Arquette is a vampire at the prom and trying to kill Luke Perry, and he says in his best Bert Lahr, "Come on, fight like a man," and then Luke Perry kills him. And then the scene transitions to Kristy Swanson, like in the boiler room or wherever she's supposed to be, and you can just hear Paul Rubens' voice, and he says, "I'll get you, Buffy, and your little dog too." And I thought, woo! Then I was like, is there a bigger, like, you know, Barbie was like the reverse Wizard of Oz, as people said, or as Greta Gerwig said, but I was like, is there like a parallel here between the Wizard of Oz that I like never realized? I haven't gotten that deep into it, but I just thought those two references in the back-to-back was no accident, and I was very into it.
Same. And, you know, I love the Arquettes as a family, like literally love the Arquettes. I love that Louis Arquette, their father, was in Waiting for Guffman. He plays the hobo in the musical. He was like, "Beans, actually, don't get me started on beans." Like Louis Arquette, legend. I love all the Arquettes.
Alexis is also a cameo apparently in it. She's like she's like a vampire DJ, but I didn't see her. But she's like credited as being like vampire DJ. It's like,
oh, well, I know who the vampire DJ is, but that person's wearing a pork pie hat, and I didn't recognize them as Alexis Arquette. But now I have to go back.
It is her.
I do love Alexis as well. I love the Arquettes, and this was, I think, the first thing that introduced me to David, and I obviously love him from Scream as well, but I really loved him as Benny in this, and I wonder if the Bert Lahr impression, like, it was pretty good, first of all. There was no mistaking what it was.
I went back to listening because I was like, am I crazy? And then I was like, come on, fight like a man, yeah. It was very good, and I was like, I feel like that could have been an Arquette choice, but maybe it was a Whedon choice. Hopefully not. But yeah, I love David Arquette. I love him and Pike together. I thought he and Luke Perry had a great rapport and were very funny. And it turns out that both Luke Perry and David Arquette like became friends with Paul Rubens and remained friends with him like for years after the film. And I saw David Arquette posting about Paul Rubens online because David Arquette is somebody I follow on Instagram. He does weird fighting now. He does like MMA fighting or something. But I think Paul Rubens' performance, I mean, what a talent. I feel like I need to go back and watch. Isn't he in Blow? Like, I need to go back and watch Paul Rubens acting in things where he's not Pee Wee Herman because the man is so incredibly talented. The vocal work alone, I thought was incredible. And then his death scene to me is one of the funniest things in cinema. And I was worried it wasn't going to make me laugh. He improvised it, of course. But I love that it gets a shout out in the credits that we get to come back to him still like, like heaving, dying. It's so good. I think it's like, it's always a reminder that like how great comedians can be as actors, but also like especially in genre because they are able to like commit to this like gravely silly premise with like great big swings that obviously sometimes don't work, but like so many times do work. And I agree that it's a great performance. I mean, it's like totally grounded in reality, but also funny and stupid, you know?
Totally. And of course, like, there's Stephen Root as the principal too, who's like giving a great performance.
Did you notice Ben Affleck as the basketball?
Yes.
I was like, is that Ben Affleck? I don't remember reading that he was in this. And then it was like he had literally one line, and I was like, that's cool. He was probably like maybe even an extra and just got a line, you know?
Totally. He looked good. I really also did. Okay, so the guy that plays the vampire in the basketball scene, I forget the character's name, but he has the eyebrows.
Yeah, the character's name is like it's like
Grueller.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wrote down his name because I loved him. And it was one of these things, again, which is like, where is he from? What do I know him from? Obviously Buffy, but for me, he was like foundational and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it turns out he's in Dazed and Confused, which that then like clarified. But the thing that really went deep for me was Teen Angel, which was the Jason Priestley like
Robin
TV
Lively
show.
Film.
Yes. And so it like then they showed clips of it interspersed on the like the new Mickey Mouse Club, so they would show like a 4-minute clip of it, and that's where I knew him from too. So I thought he's hot to me. I love his eyebrows. I love his bushy eyebrows, and I thought he was very good. I thought his performance was great as well.
So Thomas Jane, credited as Tom Jane, is apparently in it. Did you know? Did you identify which one he was? I was like, is he that other hot guy? And then I was like, no. And then I like Googled it, and I was like, maybe he was.
He's the mechanic. So he's the person that works with Luke Perry at the mechanic, and I had to Google it. I didn't recognize him in and of himself, but he like says a few lines and he's like, what should I do if I see Benny? And Luke Perry's like, run. And then it cuts to the next scene. That's him.
God, but I would not have recognized him.
The casting was kind of out of control for the film. I feel like.
All right. But the casting is amazing, but we have to get to the piece. I feel like we're both like waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Folks, we just talked to Ted Casablanca in our last episode, and then and I don't know if you knew this, but I had no recollection. Do you know who the fuck shows up in a cameo in literally the end credit sequence? And tell the folks.
None other than that blonde, not the redhead, Liz Smith, famous New York City gossip columnist, famous lesbian person that we were talking about last episode. It's almost like kismet. I did not plan that.
Ted Casablanca was like, do your listeners even know who Liz Smith was? And we were like, they better. And then here we are.
Here she is, like doing a wink, wink, nod, nod to the camera. I loved every second of it. Here's the thing. You know how Ted kept saying, Perez wanted to be the people he was writing about? I don't think Liz did, but Liz made the rounds in the entertainment circuit. Do you know what I mean? And good for her. She got a little cameo and she was great. Liz Smith also didn't do that kind of reporting, but it was I like this bit that she's at this high school where a bunch of kids got murdered. Love it.
I love her face so much.
Okay, so I have to bring it back for me because I feel like we've covered a lot of the important points. Can we just give a sweet moment to Luke Perry, who I know we've already talked a lot about 90210, but you and I both love him. My sister loved Dylan. I loved Brandon, but I also loved Dylan. I was just trying to be contrarian because everybody loved Dylan.
Yeah.
But Luke Perry is so good. I think what you said earlier is that he really popped. He had a whole point of view, and I will have to say that I will compliment the screenplay once more, is that it really was not... Benny was a dickhead and called women bitches and put a hot dog as a dick in Buffy's face or whatever. But Luke Perry wasn't that, but he also wasn't a soft idiot. I feel like he had a point of view, and there was also really a not that much misogyny except for Benny's character. And then I guess the boyfriend was also disgusting. He the friend grabbed her ass all the time. So, but he was clearly a villain. But the one part that was weird was when she stole the bike and that person was like, Dyke, you're a dyke.
I don't even remember that.
I rewound it to make sure I heard it right, because I was like, where is this coming from? What the movie actually had I don't know, I was like, oh, there's no homophobia. That seems sort of surprising for a broad comedy in 1992 about cheerleaders. And then I was like, Dyke. I was like, oh my God. But really, I went.
Maybe I did. I think I didn't know what they said, but now that you're saying it, I'm like, wow. It's you just paper over so things weird. That are incredibly hateful. Jesus.
Yeah, but I really think I thought that Luke Perry was a nice antidote to all of that sort of nasty male behavior, but also had an interesting point of view. So he wasn't just the good guy. He was sort of the trench coat weird guy who was also sexy and funny and had a point of view. And he has such a slender frame. He's such a slender man, but he has an effortless coolness where he doesn't seem like he's trying to be cool. He pops. No wonder he became an international star. He's so good. And I think he's a really good actor too. I'm saying it.
And you have a VHS of him in Rocky Horror on Broadway.
As Brad. I had to have it because I have a soft spot for Luke Perry.
How was his singing?
And decent. He can hold a tune. He's not a singer, but he was fine, He does have to sing a song by himself, and it was okay, but it wasn't as beautiful as Jared Emick, who we both love. But I really do think Luke Perry was great, and I agree that he popped in ways that Kristy Swanson didn't. Kristy Swanson obviously popped for me in Mannequin 2, which was what I was obsessed with, and then the combination of that with Buffy.
I also loved the chase with her and Charlie Sheen, where he kidnaps
her.
I've
never seen it. I've never seen it, but now I have to watch it.
I remember me and my brother Gabe and my sister Adrian renting that and Reality Bites and one other movie, and watching them on the pull-out sofa was a treat on a Saturday night with snacks. So it's a core memory, the chase.
I feel like I'm gonna have to revisit the Kristy Swanson catalog. Unfortunately, she is a crazy conservative, and she and Dean Cain starred in a play about Obama that was a dark comedy about Obama. Not a dark comedy, just a hateful play. And the fact that it was a play, not a movie, fascinating to me. That was about as deep as my research proved. But she is a nightmare and is married to the person that she competed on Skating with the Stars with, I think. That's about the depth of my knowledge about her. However, I've never seen Higher Learning. I want to see that, and now I want to see The Chase.
Oh, you've never seen Higher Learning?
Higher Learning has been on my list for years, and I've never seen it, and it feels like a real blind spot.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in forever, but my memory of it is that it's good, and then Tyra Banks is very good in it.
That's right. But I feel like the thing for Buffy that I understood halfway through why I loved it. And it's because she starts dressing like a lesbian. She's wearing a neckerchief and boots and jorts with a belt and a crop top. Like, she looks like a lesbian, which is, you know, all the more telling that somebody screams dyke at her. But like, no wonder I thought she was hot. She really goes from being somebody that I'm not attracted to at the beginning to then being attracted to her at the end because of the way that she's dressed. And then when Luke Perry throws her the leather jacket, I'm very into it.
I love that moment. He like steps on her dress and it like tears. And then I was like, what shoes is she in? Because she's like in like a Doc Marten or something, and then he throws her that like not motorcycle jacket but sort of motorcycle jacket, and I was like,
it looks like a Thriller jacket but black, and I was like, interesting choice.
I love it so much.
I was really glad to revisit it. I hope that you enjoyed it enough. Like, are there any other things that you need to bring up? I think I covered all my bases.
I really think I covered everything, and I'm so pleased. I feel like there were so many really fun discoveries. I mean, the cast was stacked, and it was so fun to see those cameos. I mean, I think you mentioned Stephen Root, but I was like, is that Stephen Root? And I was like, he looks literally the same. And I was like, this is so long ago. Like, he's been working as a character actor forever. So all of those cameos were just so pleasing and fun, and it was Michele Abrams. Woo! The reveal. It just was. That was also the Liz Smith.
The Liz Smith really took it to another level.
Yeah. So the cast was great, and the premise is so funny. And I don't know. I don't know what it would be to have the movie and not know that it was then like reinterpreted by its writer as like in quote unquote the way he originally imagined. Like what it would be as a standalone without that information, but. Yeah. I think I like it as a foil to that because of what I said earlier, which is like I like the sort of like candy coloredness of the beginning and of like Buffy being sort of vapid and stupid. Yeah, I mean, it was a fun ride. I was glad to revisit it, and also just like I liked to see how they like made the vampires look, like just like that simplistically. Like I just interested in how the vampires looked, and I thought they looked cool.
I have one last thing to say. I didn't write this down, but I have to say that. My favorite thing is where it's like she's surrounded by 17 vampires and then one of them is attacking her and she's like doing a roundhouse kick on them. And the others, if you watch the background actors, are just sort of standing in place, heaving.
Love it.
Which I love about group fight scenes where it's like they're just waiting to be able to do the next move. But it is all very practical effects, a lot of makeup, a lot of white face makeup, a lot of weird ears. I really appreciated it. I loved it.
If you know one thing about Ann and I, you know we are fans of practical effects here. We like them.
That's right.
Bring Frank Oz and the Jim Henson Factory at any point over some fucking green screen, motherfuckers.
Amen.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed watching this with us. Thank you for joining us here on You Might Know Her From. We so appreciate your continued support in these sad, dark days of the SAG-AFTRA strike. And we're so happy that you are remaining union strong with us and SAG-AFTRA. If you like what we're doing here, if you like this experimental phase that we are going through, if you like this backdoor pilot we are trying, please leave us a review if you haven't done so already. I know I name-checked some listeners earlier. If y'all haven't left a review, please leave us one. I think you all did, though. But if you're listening and you haven't left us a review, please do so. If you already have, please take someone else's phone and leave us one. It's a really actually very important thing that helps us, especially independently produced podcasts. And if you're liking this, then stand by. We're coming at you with this Patreon. We hope soon. We hope that the fucking AMTP figures this shit out ASAP.
AMPTP, I love it.
That's what I said. I love it.
If you don't already follow us on social media, we are at Damian Bellino and at Rhoda Man and at You Might Know Her From on TikTok and Instagram. So please find us there where we're posting videos, photos, content of actresses that we've had, actresses that we wish that we could have, and actresses that are dead because God love it. Suzanne Somers is going on the grid. We love her. I wanted to tell you one more thing, Damian, I forgot, and I wrote this down. Kristy Swanson is the closest that I've ever gotten to a Nicole Eggert.
She's like, you know who's...
I'm sorry to say it in the middle of the credits, but like I had to say it before I forgot it.
Folks, do we ever talked about Nicole Eggert here? I don't think we have.
We've talked about your love of Nicole Eggert and her yellow hair so much. I feel like Kristy Swanson is my Nicole Eggert. I didn't know.
You know who our middle ground is, and I don't think either of us love her, but we both like her. Do you know who the in between Kristy Swanson and Nicole Eggert is? You're gonna get there, I think.
I don't know who it is.
Okay. It is Erica Laniak.
I was going to say Erica Laniak because I love her from the Beverly Hillbillies movie.
Yeah,
that's what I'm always like.
Bordello of
is
Blood.
it Erica Laniak? I was gonna say, I was like, that's not right. That's not right. Erica Leniak
she's
is not
like
right.
the blonde, like buxom babe with like but like also has the dark eyebrows, like Kristy Swanson vibe. She's like the in between of the two of them.
Look, if I have my way, I'm going to force us to watch the Beverly Hillbillies movie, which also has a stacked cast. I think it holds up really well. Folks, you might know her from is independently produced by us. That's Damian Bellino and Ann Rodeman. We put our own money into this podcast in the hopes that you are enjoying our product. So look forward for that Patreon, babe, where hopefully we're putting a little bit of money back into the show. We want to thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment. That is, as always, Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. And every bit of editing, not the Nicole Eggert, we're leaving it in, Daniel. Every bit of editing that you hear otherwise is courtesy of the wonderful, the great, the handsome, the kind, the beautiful-eyed Daniel Sears.
All of that music you hear underscoring each and every episode of You Might Know Her From is by Gang. You can download and stream Gang wherever you listen to your music. You want to see Suzanne Somers singing in an episode of Step by Step? You want to read more about the Blonde and the Thunderbird? You want to see Luke Perry singing his solo song, not as well as Jared Emick, but pretty good for a TV actor who's also very hot? Then you know what you're going to do? I'm going to throw it to my friend here who does all this hard work. Her fingertips are bloody. She is messaging me at 8 p.m. saying, please write the episode description. I just spent an hour and a half doing the show notes.
I got to put them all in. It's very important that we have an archival record of everything that we talk about at this show. Damian's right. Find all the links in the show notes. That's beneath the episode description. And it's a great frame of reference. And if you need to educate yourself on the Beverly Hillbillies movie, don't be ashamed. Just spend some time clicking on that link. If you need to watch season 1, episode 12 of 90210 that includes the Skeletons in the Closet game, I'm going to hit you with that link. That's what I'm here for. We love you. This is what we do.
I always dreamed of going to a party where they would play like the games that they played. Spin the Bottle obviously was iconic and it happened.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to be at a party where they played Skeletons in the Closet and 7 Minutes in Heaven, and it never happened.
You never did. I did do 7 Minutes in Heaven. It was terrifying. Skeletons in the Closet, like probably closest we got was like a really mean game of Truth or Dare where somebody gets dark. But yeah, no, 7 Minutes in Heaven was threatening. But luckily, like the one time I did it, I think I went in with somebody that was like scared and calm, and that was fine, and we barely touched lips. But it really is a fascinating time where you're like, children, just like you're gonna close the basement door and let them do what they do. It's like we got into some weird shit. This is weird. Remember we played Spin the Bottle on Pride? That was weird. About that. As adults, that was weird.
Well, I was just thinking about like when is a context where I can play Skeletons in the Closet now, and I was like, I feel like it is the closest I've come is probably like playing Truth or Dare, or and then I was like, oh yeah, we played Spin the Bottle as like late 30-somethings.
It was a special time. Pride brings out the best and worst in all of us.